Top 5 marriage cliches.
It's cliches, babe. Get it right.
Let's get into that. Hey everybody, I'm Nate Warnock.
I'm Andrea Warnock.
And we are the Marriage by Design podcast couple.
Of weirdos.
We are a couple of weirdos. This is Marriage Monday on the Marriage by Design podcast. Thanks so much for joining us. And as we mentioned in our open, we are doing a top 5 today. We are doing the top 5 cliches in marriage that need to change. Mm-hmm. So we did a while ago, and you can go back and see this on our page. We did top 5, I think it was bad marital advice.
Something like that, yeah.
So this isn't that. This isn't like, things that people say necessarily that need to change. These are cliches, right? I mean, I'm sure we all know what a cliche is. So these are marriage cliches that need to change.
And the way top 5 works is, I have my list, he has his list, we order them, but I don't know what he's going to say until we're taping.
That's right, which we're doing right now. This
right.
Very moment we're doing.
Oh my gosh. And he doesn't know what I'm going to say. So
that's right.
It's a surprise to both of us.
No, it'll be fun. So top 5 cliches in marriage that need to change. Let's do that right now.
Number 5.
What do you got?
Is I've found the one.
Oh yes.
Believing that my spouse is the one.
So what's wrong with that?
Right. So not that you're thinking, oh, I'm going to have another spouse at some point or this isn't going to work out. But that implies that the person that you married is your priority.
Right.
And the priority, which shouldn't be. In marriage, God should be your number one priority. Right. He should be everything to you, and really the one that you're looking to quote complete you.
Right.
You know that movie line, "You complete me"? Isn't that a movie line?
Jerry Maguire.
Yeah, I thought so. No, your spouse does not complete you. Hopefully you're
complete me.
I don't. Hopefully your spouse complements a lot of parts of you, but your spouse is never going to complete you, and actually you're setting yourself up for failure,
right,
if you're looking to your spouse to complete you.
That's right.
So the Lord is our number one. He should be our first love. He should be our priority in life and in marriage, above our spouse.
Right.
And so to think I found the one makes it sound like, oh, you're everything to me. Well,
right.
You're a lot to me.
Right.
And you're my priority here on earth, but that's setting things up for failure if I look at you like that.
Right. That's really good, babe. That's a really good one. And it's one we hear all the time, right? And you hear that. I mean, if you're a dating couple, you've probably had somebody ask you this. Like, oh, is she the one? Right? And it's good for you to get in the habit of responding and saying, no, God's the one. But, maybe she'll be the number 2.
Who does number 2 work for?
Thank you. Look at Jerry Maguire and Austin Powers. And we're not even through number 5 yet. You are killing it.
I know. I'm really touching on a weird love language of yours.
Yeah. I mean,
movie quotes.
Honestly, if there's one thing people say about us and our podcast, we're pretty hip. I mean, we're hip with the kids, especially when we quote a movie from the 90s and one from the 2000s. We are awesome.
Yeah.
All right, my number 5 is another one that you hear all the time, and that is that in marriage, all you need is love.
Dun,
right?
dun, 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 dun.
We hear this all the time. John Lennon filled us in on this years ago. Another pop culture reference. We're killing it. But yeah, I mean, we hear this all the time. All you need to get you through the difficult times in your marriage is love. False. I mean, true, but I think probably the bigger problem with that cliche is a definition of terms problem, right? Yes, All you need is love. Agape, sacrificial love, like Christ showed us when he came down to earth, walked the planet for 33 years, and then died on our behalf. Right? I mean, the problem is, a lot of times what we mean is, all you need is googly eyes, butterflies in your stomach, a strong desire to have sex with this person, and happy feelings. That's what we mean when we say love. That's not going to get you very far in marriage, because when you start going in those difficult seasons, the stale times, the kind of boring parts of marriage, what you really need is a dedication to something greater than that person that you're with. Because the problem is, by definition, in those difficult times, the person that you're with isn't motivating you to be the spouse that you really should be. Right. So the question is, in those times, then, what is going to motivate you?
Yeah.
And the answer, and this ties in well with your number 5, the answer to that has to be God, right? A higher calling than your spouse. And for those of us that believe in God's design for marriage, the answer to that is, well, I will serve you and love you in those times and through those difficult times, even when I don't feel like it, because I was first loved and cared for through my sin, 2,000 years ago by our Creator and God and Jesus come down to earth. Yeah. So technically, I suppose, as long as we say all you need is agape, then you're probably right. But when we say all you need is love, or you hear those things said, your follow-up question should be, interesting thought, what does love mean to you? Because I think that will help you understand what that person's mindset is.
Yeah.
It's got to change. All you need is love. No bueno.
Number 4.
What do you got?
So my number 4 is that he's changed or she's changed. So this just isn't gonna work. This just doesn't work
It's anymore. A good one, babe.
So I think that's a pretty normal cliche.
Yeah, it is.
That we hear is, well, they've just changed so much. So this just isn't the person that I married.
Yeah.
Well, thank goodness. I mean, that might not be a good thing in what you're referring to.
In all circumstances, sure.
But I hope that over the course of a marriage we change. And yeah, sometimes it's going to be for the better and sometimes it's going to be for the worse. And as we live life, there are times where we really take a dive on our character. I would say, I think both you and I have had times, even in the last 5 years, where we've changed in not a great way.
Right.
And then, God gets a hold of us and...
Sure.
And we allow him to prune us and all that sort of thing, Lord willing. But that cliche of he's changed and so this just doesn't work anymore is going to happen.
Right.
And you've got to be committed.
Yeah, and what's funny is oftentimes we don't hear people say, I've changed and this isn't going to work out.
Sure.
Even though that's probably just as much the case in reality, right? I mean, maybe if we're just being factually, objectively honest, an outside party would look at that and go, well, he didn't change, right? He's always been a goofball. Right? Your sense of humor changed, right? Or whatever the case may be in that situation.
Right.
But you're right. I mean, the answer's the same either way. It's
yeah, because
we change.
You're living life,
right?
And life makes great impacts on us.
Yeah,
and you do change. Sure. Because either the season of life or the things that you've been through and experienced, and that does change you. It changes your perspective and how you think about things and how you react or act or whatever. And so there's a lot of change that happens in marriage, and I think you just have to expect that.
Sure. And if we're being honest, I mean, let's think about it this way for a minute. Your spouse spends more time with you than they do with anyone else. So if they've changed in a way that you don't like, I mean, who's probably most at fault for that? I mean,
maybe,
right? I mean, if we are the people,
what
if
kind
we
of person
become
are
the
you
people we
influencing?
hang around,
Yeah.
then yeah, and I
kind
don't
of
mean that
influence
to
are
be
you?
condemning. I mean it in a way to be hopeful, because if that's the case and you look at your spouse and go, man, they're changing in a way that I don't think is God honoring, and that's the key, then you're in the greatest position you can be to influence that. Right?
That's
How you
exactly
go
right.
about doing that can be tricky,
Yep.
but you're in the position to do it. Yeah, that's great. It's a good one, babe. My number 4 is sex is just inherently worse or less frequent within marriage. This is probably one of the most prevalent,
Thoughts about
sneaky
marriage, yeah.
cliches about marriage in a postmodern, particularly United States. That it's just, hey, if you want to have freaky sex that's fulfilling in all the right ways and creative and unique and mind-blowing and frequent and mind-blowing and frequent,
Oh my gosh.
then you need to get it out of your system before you get married, right? And I could go on. I mean, there's a ton of little sayings, that you can probably find at any given bar on any given night being thrown around by guys that just are really rooted in this same exact thing.
Yeah.
Right? I remember there was a game in college that would be played that was like, name a celebrity you would want to marry, a celebrity you would want to date, and a celebrity you'd want to have sex with, right? And a lot of the conversation is like, oh, it'd be great to have sex with this person, but I don't want to be with that person afterwards, right? And that's sort of the implication, is that, hey, sex is, once you get married, that whole great sex part is out the window. And here's the real problem with that. One, I mean, of course, if we look at God's design for marriage, that conversation isn't even a thing.
Sure.
Right? Because the only sex any of us would be having
is inside
or sex adjacent activity, right, would be within the context of marriage.
Sure.
It's not. We screw that up as human beings. If you haven't, man, stay the course in that. And but if you have, then it's easy to fall into that trap as well. If you haven't, then it's easy to fall into the trap of, oh, well, I'm never going to have amazing sex because that happens outside of marriage. And it's not true. And the real danger of taking that cliche into your marriage is that you don't really work hard and diligently to build that kind of a sexual relationship within your marriage, because you just assume the cliche.
Right.
Well, it's going to, we only have sex once a week, and I'm not really happy with that, but that's just kind of how it is in marriage.
Right.
Stop. Don't be lazy.
Right.
With regards to sex because of that.
Just as we should never stop working on our marriage,
right,
we should also never stop working on our sex life either.
Right.
So that should be something that is always being communicated about and
totally
worked on.
Right.
And worked on may mean like there doesn't need to be any improvement, but worked on as far as like spending the time doing it.
Right. Right.
And
amen. What?
There's when you choose to make that a priority in your marriage, as far as not allowing that cliche to be the cliche in your marriage, then that opens up a whole world of, we have our lives to explore sex and sex adjacent activities and to really have this depth of a sex life.
Right.
And you don't get that in a casual relationship.
That's right.
So there's something to a married sex life, if you choose to make that an important priority, that you cannot have. And I can guarantee that because of what we've experienced, you cannot have that in a casual relationship.
That's right.
So it just needs to be a cliche that you choose not to take hold in your marriage.
That's right. Yeah, and like we talked about with what was it, our Sunday night live event where we were talking? Yeah, it was, because the question came up in that Q&A that we do every Sunday night about what happens if your marriage is kind of in a lull. And one of the responses we gave was, well, we can stop being lazy, right? That's one thing with sex with regards to marriage that can become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right.
Is part of the reason why sex outside of marriage gets this glowing rap is because you don't have security in that, so you're trying to make it mind-blowing every time because you don't want the person to be like, ew, and leave, right? Well, we can do that in marriage with the security of, hey, if I try something new out on you and you go, hey, babe, please don't ever do that again, right? It's like, okay, fine, I blew it, but you know, at the same time, you know, you love me and we have that backing, and I can take risks to try and bring more pleasure to you without worrying about, you know, if I screw it up, she's going to leave. Right. All right.
Great.
Enough about that till we spend whole episodes dedicated to sex, which we will be doing this year.
All right, number 3.
That's right.
Mine is, I kind of wish I wasn't saying this cliche. The woman is always right.
Ooh.
Okay, it's not true. But I think a lot of marriage is not
a good one.
Not based on that everyone actually thinks the woman is always right, but that if we don't treat the marriage as the woman is always right, then there's hell to pay. So
real talk here on Marriage by Design.
So frequently we come across this idea or this reality in marriage that the woman is going to make you pay if you're making her mad. If mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy, kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. So if we don't at least treat in marriage like the woman is always right, or the majority of the time is right, then there's hell to pay, or there's retribution that's going to happen, and I don't want to do that, so forget it. Right. We gotta get rid of that and understand that as women, of course, we are just as errant as men, and that really comes down to pride, and men are just as errant as women. So no one's always right or always wrong, and you shouldn't be having a marriage where if you're not doing for me as I feel like should be done for what I deserve in marriage, we shouldn't be having this thing of, well, then I'm going to pay you back for that. Yeah. That's not the way marriage works. Right. You should be treating your spouse with love and respect, regardless of how they're treating you. And that's really hard to do when they're not treating you with love and respect. But that's what God calls on us to do, is to love our wives, respect our husbands, and of course, love our husbands, respect our wives. Always. Right. Without condition. Right. And so even if my husband is saying, no, you're wrong, I need to break down my pride enough to not make him pay for that. You know?
When you're right, babe.
Always.
That's right. My number 3 is that marriage is ultimately about our happiness. Yeah. This is a huge cliche. You find it for sure everywhere, outside of the church. But I think this has crept into Christian marriages as well. That, you know, God's called us to marriage because he wants us to be happy. And at the end of the day,
50% of people ain't happy.
Right. You mean because they end in divorce?
Right.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, there's very little about our relation, and listen to me carefully, there's very little about our relationship with God that is geared towards making us happy. Right? There is a lot about our relationship with God that should bring joy into our lives, but there is a Sahara Desert-sized chasm between happiness and joy. And we have confused those things for a long, long time. And so we continue to confuse them within marriage. Marriage is not designed by God to bring happiness into our lives. Now, I hope that your marriage brings joy into your life. If it doesn't,
And
then
happiness.
work on that.
Yeah.
And happiness, sort of marriage. This is the forecast for marriage. Constant joy with sprinkles of happiness. Right? That's sort of how it is. Yeah, and I'm not saying that you don't feel happy a significant percentage of the time, but my point is, oftentimes it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? As we focus on building joyful marriages and marriages that are according to God's design, then the happiness follows upon that. Mm-hmm. The problem when we switch those two things up is happiness is a fleeting emotion, right? It's something that we...
it's based on circumstance.
Right. That is a chemical reaction of our brains in the context of our circumstances. So, you might feel happy even though your marriage is a mess, right? In the same way, you might feel unhappy, even though it's just an opportunity for you to grow within your marriage. Mm-hmm. So the point is that marriage is not designed to be about your happiness, meaning your marriage isn't good because you're happy, and it's not bad because you're not happy. Yep. Right? Those things come in seasonal outputs, and we've shared this statistic before, but in The Meaning of Marriage by Tim Keller, he says that in a survey of, I think it was 1,700 couples who said they were unhappy, those that stuck it out within 5 years went from being very unhappy to very happy in their marriage, because it's seasonal, right? If you don't give up and you put into your marriage, what the Lord asks, that unconditional love and unconditional respect, and we pursue our relationship with Him as our Lord and Savior first, the happiness will come. Right. In your marriage. Yep. That's a guarantee. That it will come.
Yep, that's important.
Within your marriage. It's not about your happiness. Happiness will follow when we make sure marriage is about God's design.
Okay, our second one on the list. Number 2.
Deuce.
This is more of a Christian cliche, right?
Oh dear.
That we should never be going to bed angry.
Oh, that's a great cliche. How did I not think of that?
I'm surprised we haven't had any overlapping. So I actually have. This is based on Ephesians 4:26, which says, "Be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger." So, particularly in Christian marriages,
really good, babe.
There's this advice that's often given: don't go to bed angry. There's this belief that's lived out that you can't go to bed if you're mad, sort of thing. And sometimes the best thing to do is go to bed if you're mad.
As opposed to what?
As opposed to fighting it out between the two of you in marriage. If you have a disagreement, an argument, what's that nice way of saying it?
A tiff.
No. Anyway, a spirited conversation. Anyway, if you're having a fight between the two of you and it's dragging into the night, a lot of times those are times you're getting tired. The whole day has compiled upon you.
Yeah,
it just becomes like this round and round. You're taking rabbit trails, and it's pointless.
Right.
And the reason you keep going on is because, we're supposed to resolve this by the time we go to bed. First of all, Ephesians 4:26 doesn't say resolve your fights before you go to bed.
That's right.
Right? It says do not let the sun go down on your anger.
Right.
Well, let me back up. I should have gotten the verse for this, but anger is not sinful,
right,
in and of itself. Anger is actually a tool given to us by the Lord. Mm-hmm. It's an emotion that actually we see Jesus had times of anger, mm-hmm, righteous anger, while he walked the earth. So because we know Jesus didn't sin, anger cannot be sin. And where is it that says, be angry but sin not?
In James. I'll see if I can find the verse.
We are given permission to be angry, and that verse says, be angry but sin not, shows us we can be mad but not sin in our anger. So anger is not sin. But that Ephesians 4:26 verse is talking about, do not let the sun go down on your anger. What is going on in your anger? Again, it's not saying you need to resolve your issues, resolve your arguments by the time you go to sleep. We have found sometimes the best thing to do is say, you know what, let's table this for right now and go to sleep, because we're not getting anywhere with this. And actually we're creating more anger and more problems because we keep going. So sometimes the best thing to do is to just let it go for right now, but also come back to it later, and not allow that issue to keep on festering without healing coming to that, right?
Right.
So a wound that just festers without being tended to is just going to get to be a bigger and bigger problem and infect more and more of your marriage. It doesn't need to be tended to right in the moment. So maybe you need to come back to that, say, tomorrow, 10 o'clock, we're going to sit down and talk about this, and we're going to come to a resolution. And maybe at that time you have to say, okay, we did some work here, but we still haven't come to a complete resolution. We're going to talk whatever later.
Right.
The important part with anger is that you're looking inside. I have nothing to do with Nathan's anger, as far as I can't control what he's doing with his anger. Right. It's a me issue. So in my argument with Nathan, am I sinning? Do I have sin issues? And that needs to be worked out with the Lord.
Right.
That needs to be, you should always be working out heart issues with the Lord right away. God, I'm sinning in my anger because whatever that is. I'm being disrespectful to my husband. I'm angry, so I'm saying very disrespectful things. And, allowing the Lord to work in your heart. Or I'm wanting to, I'm feeling like this is not a righteous anger. It's just because I'm mad because I feel like I've been hurt, and I'm starting to stuff that and create bitterness, whatever that is.
That's right.
So that never go to bed angry thing is ridiculous. Throw that out. Sometimes you do need to go to bed angry, but
give that over to the Lord.
But you need to allow your anger to be given to the Lord and not sin in your anger.
Right.
Or if you are, immediately deal with that with the Lord, but your spouse doesn't need to be a part of that.
Right. And
then as far as the issue with your spouse, have a time to resolve that, but it doesn't need to be resolved before you go to bed.
Yeah, I agree with that. But don't stuff it. I mean, I know you said this, but I want to underscore what you said. Don't stuff it, right? Yeah. Don't go to bed and then never deal with it.
No, you got to deal with that.
Set a time to come back and deal with it.
Don't let that wound fester. Yeah. Fester.
Right. It's good. That's good, babe. My number 2. The kids would be better off if we separated or divorced.
Yes.
This is a tragic cliche that my honest opinion is that a lot of people use to justify what they want to do anyway, which is get out of a marriage that they don't want to be in anymore. But there is zero statistical evidence that kids are better off long term if they grow up in a home where parents have separated or divorced. Now, I'm specifically taking off the table situations of abuse. Yeah. If you are listening to this and you are in a physically or sexually abusive relationship, immediately you need to get the police involved, and you need to get your kids and yourself separated from that situation so that you and they are safe. I'm not talking about physical or sexual abuse. So please hear me clearly. If you're in that situation, I'm not talking to you at all. You need to make sure your kids and you are safe. I'm talking about a lot of marriages that have gone through a rough time. Maybe there's a lot of arguing and bickering going on between the husband and the wife. And someone says, well, because, you always say, well, I don't know, if we go down the road of separation or divorce, what about the kids? And someone will say, well, but won't the kids be better off not hearing you guys argue all the time, not witnessing you guys fighting? And the answer to that is overwhelmingly, unequivocally, no.
The kids would be better off if you both decided to allow the Lord to work in your hearts in your marriage.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And it's important for your kids and can be really beneficial for them to see you arguing and having times of intense communication. Not necessarily like call them into the room and, hey, check this out. But kids know. Right, I mean, they overhear the argument.
Which isn't to say, like, hey, have these nasty knockout, drag-out fights in front of your kids. But to have allow your kids to see some conflict, and hopefully then resolution of conflict.
Right.
Specifically, if you're going to do that in a positive way, is great.
That's right.
But
they're just simply not going to be better off if you separate or divorce. They're just not. The only statistics you can find, and I encourage you to take a look, the only statistics that you can find that support that at all are statistics of kids that are still, like were taken like a decade ago, right? Where they go, oh, it seems like those kids are fine. Well, yeah, but those kids are 18 to 24 right now, right? I mean, hard for them to say whether their life's great or not when they're in the thick of that age where they know more than everyone else, and they're not going to give some pollster the gratification of saying, yeah, my parents really wrecked my life when they got divorced. Right? I mean, they're 18 to 24. So, but any statistic ever taken of adults, right, 30 plus age group, of what it did to them to see their parents go through divorce, every single one of them was negative. So please don't buy into that cliche of, well, the kids are going to be better if they don't grow up in a home where there's conflict. Because the problem is, when you separate or divorce your spouse and you get together with someone else down the road, your kids are going to come over, and guess what they're going to see? Times of conflict. Because when human beings are living together under the same roof, there's going to be conflict. Same way, even if you don't get in a new relationship, when your kids come over and holler at your boy if you have teenagers, there's conflict, right? I mean, conflict and conflict resolution are a part of life. And if we can't allow our children to see the relationship that we stood at the altar and said is the most important relationship outside of our relationship with God, if we're not willing to fight through that in front of our kids and for our kids' benefits, then what? I mean, how do we expect them to fight for anything else? So please don't buy into that cliche. Separation and divorce are never the best thing for your kids. So if you want to choose to move forward with that, despite the fact that you're hurting your kids, which you are, then that's between you and your spouse and God. But don't allow your kids to justify you doing that. Stick it out for their benefit. Get some couples around you that can breathe new life into your marriage. Get right with the Lord, and let your kids see how you guys fought for them, not against each other. That's my number 2.
Okay, we're on the last one. Number 1.
Number 1.
Marriage is 50-50.
Ooh, I had this one on my list and it got cut.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this is probably my number 6 for me.
Oh man, it ended up being my number 1.
This is great.
I think it's a typical thought in marriage. It's maybe not something that we speak out loud, but something that we think inside of marriage.
Yeah, you're right.
It should be 50-50.
Right.
I give, you give equally. We're all happy.
Right.
Well, reality is that's number 1, not the design God created.
Right.
God created the design that I give 100% at sacrificial love.
Right.
Nathan gives 100% sacrificial love.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're both giving 100% at the same time, wow, that's a great marriage. But what's probably happening at times is Nathan's giving 100% and I'm giving 30%.
Right.
Because of whatever that's going on. I'm allowing the enemy into my thought life and thinking Nathan's a chump. And so I don't want to give as much, or whatever the situation is, or it could be a season of life or whatever. But if we're both committed to I will give to my marriage sacrificially, regardless of whether I believe that person deserves everything that I'm giving, then yes, at times we're going to fail that, of course.
Sure.
But that's the way God designed marriage to be.
That's right.
Just as we can see that in our relationships with the Lord. He's always giving 100% to us. He's always everything.
That's right.
In our relationships, and of course we fail that in our relationships with him. We're never giving our best to him all the time, you know?
Right.
But he always is. So in marriage, it's not a 50-50 thing. Divorce is 50-50.
Right.
But marriage is not meant to be I come halfway, you come halfway.
Right.
We completely bridge the gap.
100%.
From our side, whether the other person is or not.
Yeah.
And I think that that thought creeps into your marriage, whether you know it or not, because it does for me, and I know for a lot of my friends that can creep into marriage and really wreak havoc just in the everyday stuff.
Yeah.
So a great example is, I was telling my friend the other day, I don't remember why we were talking about this, but I was so tired recently, or really sick, or so, I don't know. I think I was just really tired. And it was the end of the day, and our kitchen was a mess, and I just laid on the couch. Like I wasn't sleeping, I was just laying on the couch. And normally our routine, Nathan's and my routine, is once we get the kids to bed, then we finish cleaning up the house and whatever, so that it's mostly reset the next day. And we do that together. Well, this time I just sat on the couch, and Nathan did all of it, and he never... I don't know that you even thought about it. He never said anything about it. Never was like, are you going to get up and do something?
Right.
He was giving 100% and I was giving 0% in that moment, you know? But that's the way marriage is meant to be.
Right.
Is the way Nathan was. Like, he was giving, and it didn't matter what he was getting in return.
But then I went on a sex strike.
No, you didn't. Oh my gosh.
No, I didn't. No, that's how it is, right? That's how it is. And we can recite tons of times where, I had something going on, or I was just being a bum, and you filled in the gaps.
Yeah, but that's the great thing about marriage.
That's the point.
As long as you're not a bum all the time, you can be a bum sometimes, and then it's like, okay, well.
And as a side note, if you're in a tragic position where your spouse is a bum all the time, the reality of the matter is, if that doesn't change,
right?
I mean, we're going 100% of the way,
yep.
Because the commitment is ultimately to God, who always 100% of the time goes the full way, yep. For us. Yeah, it's a great number one, babe. Great number one.
No, but it was your number 6. So.
My number one is, well, it's my list is right. My number one is
get you for that later.
The grass is always greener on the other side.
It is.
This will wreck your marriage, because, and I know this cliche isn't even necessarily about marriage, and that's partly why it will wreck your marriage,
right?
Because go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say it is, and why is it always greener on the other side?
Because the guy on the other side waters his lawn. Yeah. Right. That's the joke.
You're not watering your lawn.
That we say, right? We can spend so much time looking at someone else's marriage, looking at someone else's wife, right, or husband. But I'm specifically talking about, their marriage, right? I mean, lust is a problem, right? Don't fall into that. But I'm not necessarily focusing on that with this number one. I'm talking about, why is it that Nathan and Andrea never fight, right? If we just had a marriage like this couple that we see do 40 minutes on YouTube twice a week, then we'd really have it set, or whatever the case may be, right? It's, if we just had as much money as this other couple has, if our kids just behaved like this other couple did, right? I mean, whatever the thing is, it wrecks your marriage, because what you've now done is taken your sacred relationship and put it up for comparison against a relationship that really, if we're being honest, nothing about. Right? You don't know what Nathan and Andrea do when the camera's not on. You don't know what your neighbor's relationship looks like when they're not sitting out on the driveway laughing and, hanging out at the end of the day. You don't know what that couple across the street that has all the money, you don't know how much debt they have. But the problem is, the grass is always greener mentality makes you look at your own marriage and devalue it. And that's really the problem with this one, is you start to look at your marriage as less valuable than all of these other marriages around you. And where the joke about watering it comes in is you get so busy and preoccupied standing on the edge of your yard looking into the other guy's yard that he's over there taking care of his yard. You're standing on the fence watching him not taking care of your yard, and then you turn around and go, man, well, why is all the grass dying? Well, because you didn't do anything to take care of your yard. You just stood there and looked at everybody else's yards. So, of course, the grass is greener. Right? The biggest fix to this is we need to become all consumed with our own yard. Right? And believe me, I'm talking about, now I'm including back in lust within this, right? You need to start spending a lot more time in your yard if you're struggling with this, and I think you know what I mean. We have to become consumed with building this culture within our marriage of love and mutual respect, unconditional love, building up our marriage. And here's the difficult part is the longer you don't water your yard, the harder it is to start watering it. Because when you recommit to focusing on your marriage when it's in a state of neglect, it's difficult to do that because it's uncomfortable and awkward, and there's probably going to be conflict because
and the watering doesn't seem to even do anything for a while.
That's right. And so it's easy to go, okay, I tried this, I'm going back to the other guy's yard, right? But don't do that, because if you commit to watering your yard, paying attention to it, making it the focus of your attention and your effort, you will get out of it the results that you want. But you have to, one, don't take your eye off the prize and start focusing on those around you. And two, man, don't let your neighbors outwater their yard, right? Because compared to yours, get in your yard and spend your time there, right? Get in your marriage, dig into it, right? Dig into your spouse, and her desires, his desires, emotionally, physically, spiritually.
Yeah, become a student of your spouse.
Become a student of your spouse.
Not of your neighbor's yard.
Right. That's right. That's right. And if you do that, the Lord will bless that, because that was ultimately his design for marriage, because it's a reflection of, man, he doesn't ever stop watering us as his people. He is all consumed with his relationship with us, even when we aren't reciprocating that at all.
Yeah.
Let's reflect that in our own marriages.
Good, number one.
That's my number one.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Guys, I hope you really enjoyed this top 5. We always enjoy doing them. Thanks so much for joining us. And remember, God is for your marriage. Have a great week.
Hey, thanks for joining us on Marriage by Design. If you were impacted by this video, like it by hitting the thumbs up below. Also, don't forget to subscribe, and once you subscribe, hit the bell icon so you can be notified when new episodes release.
Excellent. Also, one of the huge pillars of our show is interactivity between us and you. So we would love you to comment down in the comments below if you have thoughts about this video, or if you have questions or other things you'd like to see considered in the future. In addition, if you'd like, you can email us. That's marriagebydesignpodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram @marriagebydesignpodcast, or you can find us on Facebook by searching Marriage by Design Podcast. Finally, if you want to, you can tweet at us. We do have a Twitter account that is @MarriageXDesign. Thanks, and have a great day.